Do we have quorum?
Yes, Chair Challoner, we have more than 50% of the members present.
Okay. The next matter of business is the agenda. And we have obviously a motion for the approval of the agenda as published. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Gord, seconded by Brian. All in favor? It's carried.
Mr. Chair, can we add something to that agenda under other business?
Could you repeat that?
Could we add something to the agenda under other business, item 15?
Okay, I will mark that in and we will come back to you, David, under other business.
Please and thank you.
Okay, will do. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Minutes of the previous meeting, which was February. I need a mover and a seconder for those minutes. Somebody who is in attendance. Sean has moved it, seconded by Bruce. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. No business arising from the previous minutes. No delegations, no presentations. One item of correspondence. I need somebody to remove receipt of that correspondence, please. Moved by Brian, seconded by Pam. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. No first and second reading of the bylaws. In terms of my report this month, and I'm assuming that you have all read it, there'll be a test after. There's three items that I wanted to bring to your attention. The first involves our manager of corporate services, Sonia. It's her last day in the job as she is retiring after 25 years of service to the organization. Sonia has been an exemplary leader, particularly when it comes to overseeing GRCA's increasingly complex financial matters over the last couple of years. On behalf of the board, we wish to thank her for her many years of committed service. Thank you, Sonia. A couple sad notes. You would have read about Marilyn Murray, who was a longtime member of the foundation, lived a good life, passed away recently at the age of 92. Devoted volunteer on our board and was very involved with the Guelph Lake Nature Center project and the Your Life campaign. And so on behalf of the foundation and the authority, our condolences to her family. Just found out the other day that Ted Fairless, who some of you may know, passed away peacefully at the age of 88. Ted was appointed to the board by the region of Waterloo in the 80s and served until 2003 and was present when the Grand River first received the Heritage River designation in 1994, which we're going to talk about later on in today's meeting. The flags at head office have been lowered to honor Ted, and condolences will be shared with his family on behalf of the GRCA. And then finally, from my perspective, I just want to thank Sean for stepping in at the AGM in February as a result of my injury. I'm doing fine, but I've decided that I don't really have a future in the National Hockey League, and so I'm going to call it a day in terms of my hockey career. And on behalf of Mayor Davis, go Bulldogs. Good luck. Are there any questions or comments with respect to my report? All right, I'll need a mover and a seconder for that, just for receipt. Moved by Pam, seconded by Doug. All in favor? It's carried. The next item was a matter that we've discussed as a board a couple times over the last few years, but I brought it back for this meeting because Lisa Hearn, one of our members, had not had the opportunity, she felt, to have a discussion with the board with respect to this matter. And so we're going to do that this morning and let her have her say. What we have provided in addition to the original report is an understanding of how strongly the agricultural sector is represented around this board. Half the board responded to my request for agricultural background. 7 of the 13 who responded are involved with the industry. That's not to say that 14 of 26 are in agriculture, but of those who responded, a slight majority were involved in the agricultural industry. So we're strongly represented. But at this point in time, Lisa, it's your opportunity to sort of share with us your perspective, and we'll go from there. So you've got the floor.
Sure, thank you. Wasn't expecting this. It was my understanding, at least through the way I read the report, that you weren't going to send a letter unless it was directed by the board. But it is my feeling that as counselors, most of the board of directors is counselors. Unless you have at least 3 members in your area, they have to be a counselor. And we all have an end date. So I think which is a year and a half. It's very presumptuous of us to assume that there will be agricultural representation on this board in a year and a half. I know I likely won't be here, and I am here for conservation. That's my reason. So I believe in looking to the future. Less than a percentage and a half of people have an agricultural background now. And it is very, very difficult when you have those kind of cards stacked up against you, with voters to actually get in when you have real experience. I applaud GRCA for everything they've done relating to agriculture, but I think we need to look forward to the future. And that's our job as a board of directors, is to look 10, 20, 50, 100 years down the road. And that's the way that I prefer to base my decisions. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Lisa, one of the things that I am contemplating discussing with the board, not necessarily today, but certainly in a number of months from now, is, do we as a board suggest the kind of prerequisites we're looking for membership around the GRCA? So, for example, should we be overt in our notes to the municipalities that are represented on this board to suggest that they give consideration to people who have an agricultural industry background, or who are accountants or lawyers or planners, etc. And it may be a good idea on our part, if we want to make sure that we wish to continue to have strong representation from the agricultural industry around this board. I take what you're saying at heart. Things do change, and maybe that requires us to sort of change in terms of how we approach our municipal partners in terms of suggesting overtly the kind of representation that we're seeking around this board in future. But appreciate your comments. Any other comments? Seeing none, then I need a mover or seconder for the report. Moved by Sean. Seconded by Bruce. Any further comments? All in favor? It's carried. The next item of business is the board presentation schedule. And I think we had a discussion about this. Certainly I did with various members individually about their desire to know more about what is taking place at GRCA and who's responsible for what. And this is part of the process of meeting the people who have very specific responsibilities at a very senior level that greatly impact the day-to-day business of the GRCA. And so this is the presentation schedule that if you approve, we will see enacted at the board over the next several meetings. Are there any comments or questions about the report? All right, seeing none, could I have somebody move and second the report? Moved by Pam, seconded by Gord. All in favor? It's carried. The next item is the administrative bylaw update. Does anybody have any comments or questions with respect to the bylaw? Any changes they wish to discuss before I look at a mover and a seconder? All right, so then seeing none, then we will actually do a more complete bylaw reading. So I will read that, then I'll look for a mover and a seconder. So that bylaw 2-2025 be read a first, second, and third time and adopted by the general membership to take effect on March 28th, 2025. And that bylaw 1-2025 be repealed on March 28th, 2025. And that a copy of bylaw 2-2025 be forwarded to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks and posted on the Grand River Conservation Authority's website. Any questions or comments? I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Brian, seconded by Pam. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. The next item of business is the senior leadership team. And you've got a copy of the report in front of you. I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor for any questions or comments. Moved by Sue, seconded by? Seconded by Guy. Any questions or comments on the report? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Next matter is the financial summary. Financial summary for the period ending February 28th be approved. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Carrie, seconded by Lisa. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Cash and investment status. Need a mover and a seconder for this report. Moved by Jerry, seconded by Christine. Any questions or comments of staff on this matter? All in favor? It's carried. Next item of business is a purchasing matter. Need a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. It's with respect to a tender. Moved by Sue, seconded by Sandy, and I'll read the motion. That the Grand River Conservation Authority award the tender for the 2025 roadside preparation and service treatment to Cornell Construction Limited of Brantford, Ontario, up to the amount of $753,047.50, excluding HST. All in favor? It's carried. The next item of business is also purchasing its replacement vehicle. I need a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor, please. Moved by Sean, seconded by Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. The matter reads that the Grand River Conservation Authority purchased one 2025 Ford Transit one-ton medium roof cargo van for amount of $69,227, excluding HST and licensing from Parkway Ford Sales, and that the Grand River Conservation Authority purchased one 2025 Ford Transit half-ton low-roof cargo van at the amount of $67,263, excluding HST and licensing from Parkway Ford Sales Limited, and that the Grand River Conservation Authority purchased one 2025 Chevrolet Silverado half-ton four-wheel drive pickup at a total amount of $50,264, excluding HST and licensing from Finch Chevrolet Cadillac Buick GMC Limited, and that the Grand River Conservation Authority purchased one 2025 Dodge Ram medium-duty 5500 series cab and chassis at a total amount of $91,702, excluding HST and licensing from Blue Mountain Chrysler Limited. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Next item is also purchasing Administrative Center Cleaning Services. Need a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor, please. Moved by Sue. Need a seconder. Thanks, Bruce. And that is that the Grand River Conservation Authority retain Corporate Mirror Inc., Cleansing Masters Canada, to provide cleaning services at the Administrative Center Complex for $152,083, excluding HST, over a term of 3 years. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried.
One question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And this has to do with all the tenders. What's for the purchasing policy? What's the limit before it has to go to the board for approval? I don't know what that is.
I can speak to that.
Sure.
Chair Talonor, I can speak to that. It's $100,000.
$100,000.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Anything further? All right, David, thank you. Then the next item of business is the Guelph Lake Nature Center naming opportunities. And I need a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor. Moved by Pam, seconded by Doug. I'll read the motion. That Grand River Conservation Authority approves the donor naming opportunities for the Guelph Lake Nature Center. Any questions or comments to this report? I should also tell you that it was reviewed by GRCF last week, and they were supportive of it as well. All right. All in favor? It's carried. The next item is an update on nitrates. And this is a request that came from Kevin. I need a mover or a seconder to receive this report, and then if anybody's got any questions of staff. So it's moved by Sean, seconded by Kevin. Any questions of staff? Please, go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've spoken to this previously, but I always like repeating the message. And the rising level of nitrates in the river is a very serious concern. I'll explain in a minute the impact it has on water treatment and the water that we provide to our residents. But it does have a very significant impact on the ecosphere of the river, and in particular marine life. And sustained high levels of nitrates can have a dramatic impact on the fish and the other life that's in the river, and that's certainly something we should be concerned about. And I'm very pleased to see that staff have formed this working group, and they're pulling in so many people that have various degrees of expertise and experience dealing with nitrates. And I'm hoping that we can make some significant change to the ecosphere of the river and actually see nitrate levels begin to decline. In terms of drinking water, when the level of nitrates exceeds or approaches 10 parts per million, you run the risk of blue babies, and the Medical Officer of Health will issue a bottled water advisory. We came close to that twice this winter. We had levels of about 9.8 in the river down in Brantford New Year's Eve, and again about a month ago. We do have the capacity in Brantford to close the river gates, and we have a reservoir that has about a day or two's worth of water. And so if the levels decline in the river, then we don't have a bottled water emergency. And so to deal with that, the traditional water treatment systems do not take nitrates, don't treat for nitrates. And you need a reverse osmosis system, which is very rare when it comes to municipal water treatment. We at Brantford taking a very proactive approach. We started a pilot program this year. We brought in some portable reverse osmosis units. They come in tractor trailers, and they're kind of plug and play, but you have to do a lot of work to your system to be able to accommodate these units. And we can treat up to about 20% of our water and can bring down the levels. I actually had a tour of the reverse osmosis units yesterday, but it's extremely expensive. And to incorporate that permanently into our water treatment system in Brantford would cost tens of millions of dollars. So I'm again repeating the importance of this issue. My gratitude to senior staff and everyone who's involved in this working group. I hope we can affect some meaningful change to the ecosphere of the river and also protect the water that we use, many of us use to provide to our residents. And thirdly, this issue of reverse osmosis, it also takes out of the river water pharmaceutical residuals, which typical water treatment does not remove from the river water or surface water. And so in the future, we may be asking for the support and assistance of the GRCA in being able to obtain grants from the higher levels of government to be able to establish a permanent reverse osmosis system into our water treatment system. And we're also treating it as a pilot project for the province. We're collecting all kinds of data to show the impact that the reverse osmosis system has on the water quality and the chemicals. So I'd like to tell you that Brantford is leading the way on this issue in terms of how to treat it, and much more to come. And again, thank you to senior staff.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks for raising the matter with us. Does staff have any comments? Yes, sorry, Sandy.
Yeah, excuse me. Just a question. The report talks about 34 sites that have monitoring. So do we look at sort of where the nitrates, I guess, are coming from, or where they're accumulating most?
Through the chair, yes, we deliver the provincial water quality monitoring program that has over 30 sites across the watershed. Our watershed is quite large, so with that source of information, our understanding of kind of at a coarse scale, those areas of the watershed where the nitrates are coming from is still pretty much at that coarse scale. So think, we can identify the Upper Conestoga River as a source area, the Upper Nith River as a source area, Kennegadig Creek. We are doing some additional monitoring this year with some new funding from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to try to narrow that down to smaller geographic areas.
Okay, thank you. And what's our role then in sort of providing guidance for wherever those sources may be?
GRCA plays a number of roles. As a watershed agency, our role is to do that watershed or regional scale monitoring and reporting on conditions. We do integrate as a source protection authority information about threats to drinking water into the Grand River Source Protection Plan. So we have work underway to identify nitrate as an issue under the Clean Water Act for the drinking water intakes, including Brantford's, but also the region of Waterloo and Six Nations in a future update of the Source Protection Plan. We work on the implementation side in directing cost share grants to landowners and farmers to do water quality projects in those areas of the watershed, well, really across the watershed, but particularly in those areas that we know to be source areas for nutrients. And then as noted, we play a collaborative role because what's challenging about the nitrate issue is that there are rural non-point sources, there are urban point sources, and none of the agencies, be it federal, provincial, landowners, municipal, no one of them have all the tools in the toolkit to affect the kind of change we need to address this issue. So we have to work collaboratively to come up at the issue from multiple angles. And we have, for many decades, played that role as kind of connecting the dots and providing a forum for agencies to work together on those kinds of challenging issues.
Anything further? Okay, thanks, Sandy. Sean?
Have we looked ever at maybe doing a symposium, approaching agricultural community or approach industry is to talk about this sort of in a more open forum? That way, how we can support each other. That way, obviously we have a lot of information and data to bring and then to reach out to those groups. So we have it sort of in a very collegial atmosphere, not in a kind of a pointing finger, but talk about this. Have we ever thought about doing something or do the lead on something like this? Oh, sorry.
Through the chair, yes. The board will receive a report in the coming months on updating our 2014 collaborative water management plan, which is the plan that includes our water quality strategies for addressing nitrogen and phosphorus. And we're looking at opportunities to engage the agricultural community more directly in those updates. We do already have really close working relationships with the farmers that participate on the Rural Water Quality Program committees. Those are the committees that allocate the funding for those cost share grants. And so they're quite aware of these kinds of issues in the watershed and the important role that farmers play. So we might work through those committees to do a little more enhanced engagement with farmers.
Anything further, Sean? David Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask through you, Mr. Chair, to Janet. You said there's some additional monitoring. Are those monitors? Are they monitor the nitrates in real time? And is that something we can check on the GRCA website, like river flows?
So through the chair, the GRCA has two distinct monitoring programs. One, that provincial program with the more than 30 sites, that's a program where we physically go out, take a physical sample of water and submit it to a laboratory for analysis. We do that at these 30 sites about 10 times a year. So that's not real time. We do have 9 continuous water quality stations with real-time reporting of parameters like temperature and dissolved oxygen. 2 of those have been instrumented with real-time nitrate analyzers. So we have that real-time information that we do make available on our website. One of those sites is on the Grand River at Bridgeport, and the other is on the Grand River at Brant, just upstream of the city's drinking water intake.
Okay, okay. That's something I might be checking on a regular basis. And I'll just, if I could, Mr. Chair, just reiterate what was already said. The nitrates isn't just a GRCA problem. I mean, but the GRCA could certainly lead the way forward. It's a multi-jurisdictional. I mean, I just look at our own municipality. We have a hog barn going up right beside a municipal drain, and believe it or not, that's a better situation than having the hog barn, which was situated on top of the municipal drain. So it's those kinds of things that no, you can't get the GRCA involved with that, but our municipality is trying to do what we can to make sure that there's no contamination. But it is multi-jurisdictional, so I would like to see the GRCA take more of a leadership role in trying to make this a better situation.
Anything further, David? Okay, Kevin?
Yeah, interesting, this discussion. Typically the nitrate levels in the river rise during the winter because nitrates do oxidize. And so during the summer, when you have a lot of heat and light, and you don't have ice in the river, the nitrate levels tend to be around 3, 2, 3, or 4. In the winter, they tend to average around 6 or 7. There were the 2 incidents that occurred this winter, and these spiking up to close to 10, generally associated with a very heavy rainstorm. And so you can conclude from that the 2 are related, and what happens is you have nutrients that are getting flushed into the river that would otherwise, in the summer, they would stay in the soil. And so I think the research shows that it also comes from the wastewater treatment systems. That generally seems about 20 to 30%. It really comes down to good nutrient management practices in farming operations. And in fact, at Rome, I was able to get secure a meeting with Minister Flack, who then was the Minister of Agriculture. And I was surprised that he wasn't aware of it, but I know there are members of his ministry that are concerned about this issue. And so a lot of it as well is it's not targeting sources, but it's really emphasizing just good management, whether it's wastewater treatment or whether it's farm management and managing nutrients. And so that's part of what we at the city are trying to do, working, advocating with the Ministry of Agriculture. But obviously that lobbying, that advocating, it's various agencies, multidisciplinary, pulling together. That's what's going to address this issue. It's not just one source, it's many. But first of all, everybody has to be aware there's a problem. And then hopefully we can then begin to deal with it in a more managed, effective method that will benefit water treatment systems, but also just the general health of the river.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Any final comments from staff? Okay. No final comments from the board? All in favor? Carried. The next item of business actually will be preceded by a staff presentation by Janet Ivey, and this is the Canadian Heritage River Monitoring Report. And I think everybody understands the importance of this. So, Janet, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair and Board, for the opportunity to share information on this project. Oops. When our Grand River and its tributaries were designated a Canadian Heritage River in the 1990s, that came with it some requirements for reporting to maintain that designation. So the Canadian Heritage River Boards provides templates for this reporting. We do complete really scoped annual reporting based on web scans of activities, but then every 10 years we're required to produce a more substantive report. And two of the main pieces of this report are a chronology of events. So think of all the events, activities, studies, designations, cultural experiences that occur every year across our watershed that have something to do with river-based recreation, cultural heritage tied to the river, or natural heritage. In addition to that chronology of events, they like us to report on how things are changing over time. So when the river was designated, the characteristics of those natural cultural heritage features and river-based recreation were documented and identified as heritage values. So we report now on those values, how they're improving or declining, and what some of the challenges and opportunities are. And as you can imagine, that's an incredibly broad scope because the GRCA's role in cultural heritage is quite scoped. So this was a good opportunity to renew some relationships to a really broad range of organizations and individuals. So we collected information in a number of different ways, and this really kicked off and served a dual purpose of working with these folks to foster some celebration of last year's 30th anniversary of the designation. So the report is full of information that we got directly from municipalities and First Nations, NGOs, provincial agencies, a whole range of stakeholders, including private businesses as well. So that came through a lot of email correspondence, through discussion with past members of our Heritage Working Group, of which we had board members participating on for many years. We held an information session here in the auditorium with about 40 different organizations. We had an online survey and kind of excitingly renewed a collaboration with the University of Waterloo with the Collaborative Water Program, which is a really excellent interdisciplinary graduate studies program. And so we had those graduate students go out and look for recent information on how those heritage values are changing over time. And then they brought that information back and met with 20 professionals across all sectors to share their finding and learn from their experiences. Those students then prepared briefing notes that they shared with us to help inform the study. So the report, when you think of that chronology of events, what's going on in the watershed, had three main themes. The first is First Nations cultural awareness and reconciliation, reflecting the broad trends through that, affecting, many ways of the way people expect to understand and experience culture and history these days. There also was a strong theme about connecting with the Grand River, partly a spiritual connection and identifying of the Grand River as a special place, but also the improvements that we're seeing in the recreational infrastructure, be it paddling opportunities, hiking or biking opportunities throughout the watershed. And then over this kind of special 10-year period, we had some milestone anniversaries, not just of the designation, but also of some of the seminal flooding events in the Grand River. So we saw communities, including Cambridge, really recognizing those milestones. In terms of changes and threats to those heritage values, some of them are very common, and the kinds of changes in our watershed that we talk about affecting a lot of different things. So population growth, demand for services, climate change really came up across all of the theme areas. But the report highlights some of the positive work that municipalities, the GRCA, organizations like Ducks Unlimited are doing to restore streams and wetlands, to address invasive species. to develop new opportunities both for recreational infrastructure, but also storytelling opportunities to connect people with the history of the communities and individuals and First Nations in the watershed. And then on the recreational side, we had the opportunity to bring forward information from our own conservation areas to really illustrate some of the challenges in managing river-based recreation and that growing demand, improving infrastructure, addressing some of the conflicting uses that you get with shared resources, and also illustrate some of the impacts of climate change, unlike this year where we had a really robust snowy winter. In previous years, we've really seen impacts of changing climate on some of our winter recreational offerings. And finally, really the overall objective of that 10-year report is for us to comment on whether the designation should still be in good standing for the Grand River. And our report does make that conclusion. I think it was a really good opportunity to reach out to familiar organizations and some that have really come into being and expanded their influence over the last 10 years, like the regional tourism organizations. And there really is a broad and strong network of individuals and organizations that are really still working to promote that heritage river designation and to fulfill the goals of the strategy around that designation to strengthen the stewardship and enjoyment of the river and improve the well-being of life. And maybe I'll just end by saying that photograph on the right is one exciting thing that we're going to do this year. I've mentioned in the past there are 5 cast bronze plaques spread about the watershed that note the Heritage River designation. Most of those are only in English and French, except for the one in Cambridge, which is English, French, and Mohawk. And over the last year, we updated the inscription in English and had new translations into French and Mohawk, and a first ever translation into Ojibwe. So what you see in that image there is the Mohawk translation on the right and the Ojibwe translation on the left. So we have 2 new sets of plaques that will have all 4 languages. One set will be installed in Rockwood, recognizing the Eramosa River, and we have some conversations undergoing with municipalities for the Speed River plaques. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Any questions of Janet with respect to her hard work on this report? Sue?
What a great job and well done.
Thanks, Sue. Any other questions or comments? Sandy?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Just an observation as I was listening today, and I know our roles changing and our mandates are changing, but it's really important that we bring the children on board with conservation and with the river. And I'm not sure how we do that in this current context, but I'm excuse me, a little bit sad that that our program has reduced as much as it has. So, but education is really important going forward into how people treat the river, how they look at the river, and how they make decisions around the river.
Thanks, Sandy. Colleen?
Yeah, thank you. Very, very good report. I just have a question. I'm really happy to see the Indigenous languages added. What was that process like in determining, why the 2 languages? If you could, just speak to that process.
Through the chair, we work most closely with the 2 First Nations that have reserve lands within our watershed. So that is 6 Nations of the Grand River, who were part of the process in originally developing the Mohawk translation of the inscription. And then over the past year, we worked with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation to identify the appropriate language of Ojibwe, and we worked through them to secure a local to Southern Ontario translation of the text.
Excellent. Thank you.
Jerry?
Yes, thanks through the chair. I think this might be my 5th year on the board. I think I'll have to look back. This report was one of the most educational reads I've ever had out of the 5 years. It goes through the 10 years. So kudos to staff. Again, echoing a little bit what Sandy had mentioned about education. I would hope that our educational partners would share this report with whomever, just as a teaching. Again, excellent read. Much appreciated. I've learned so much just from reading that report. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry, for your comments. Any final comments from staff?
If I may, through you, Chair, I would just note that the GRCA does work to support education of youth through children's water festivals. So perhaps we'll have an opportunity to bring more information about that at a future time. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I need a mover or a seconder of the report to get it on the floor. It's moved by Jerry, seconded by Sue. Any further comments? We're receiving the report. All in favor? It's carried. The next matter is the Category 2 Municipal Programs Annual Report. I need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor, please. Moved by Gord, seconded by Doug. Any questions or comments of staff on this report? Seeing none, I'll just read the report. The report number GM 032522, annual report on Category 2 Municipal Programs be received as information. All in favor? It's carried. I know it went pretty quick, but I think everybody understands how important that report actually is, and how much work actually staff and the board were involved as we went through the process over the last couple of years. Thanks for your support of that report. The next matter is the annual report of compliance with requirements under Ontario Regulation 4124. I need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor, please. Moved by Brian, seconded by Pam. Any discussion or questions of staff? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. The next matter is going to be, there's going to be a staff presentation actually for the second part of it, but if staff want to come forward at this point in time, because there may be questions with respect to the current watershed conditions, the staff presentation really relates to the watershed flood warning system, because I know that a number of board members were very concerned over the last 30 to 45 days about flooding conditions. And so that's why we've asked for a staff presentation. But we'll go through the first part of the two parts here, and then we'll get focused on the presentation by Vahid. So the first matter is current watershed conditions. I need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor, please. Moved by Pam, seconded by Sandy. Any questions or comments on this particular report? All right, seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. So now we'll get into the staff presentation on flooding on the Grand over the last 45 days. And I'm sure there'll be questions about this.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is a presentation on the flood coordinators, a special spring flood coordinators meeting that we held at the beginning of the March. I think it was Monday or Tuesday, March 4th, and a review of the current conditions. We will have a detailed report on the flooding that was observed mid-March and the following month. Everybody, as the chair mentioned, was anxious about the amount of snow that we had this year, specifically the first couple of weeks of February. So I think it was after the several storm events that we had after February 15 that we decided to have a spring special flood coordinators meeting. Already we had one in the beginning of December to go over the roles and responsibilities and the conditions, but we thought given the amount of the snow that we had in the watershed, it's not a bad idea to provide people with a update of the condition status, and also recognizing that we had a lot of snow specifically in the upper portion of the watershed. We were seeing levels that were observed previously in 2014, and we knew that was a very significant year for us. So we held that meeting on March 4th. Caitlin Lynch, manager of water infrastructure, provided a presentation, a brief overview of our flood response organization and roles and responsibilities and types of messages that we have. This is something that typically is provided to staff, but we wanted to have a reiteration of the conditions and the types of messages before the event, potential event that we may see for all the CEMCs in the watershed. Recognizing the colder temperatures that we have and the concerns that staff might have, residents and municipal flood coordinators might have with river ice conditions, I thought it might not be a bad idea for myself to present our ice management plan that we presented to the board back in October, if I recall correctly. We just reviewed potential types of ice jams that may occur as a result of what we were seeing, and reviewed what actions we may be able to take to mitigate the potential impacts. Just an overview of conditions so it's refreshing people's minds. After that, Lisa, the Stockholm manager of strategic communications, provided a presentation on the primary communications that we have with municipalities, what resources that we have, what tools we have on our website. It's just a reminder for them to be aware of heading into the potential flood event, and also a review of brochures that we have for some of our damage centers. What we have started to do is, for almost all our flood coordinators meetings, we're inviting a warning preparedness meteorologist from Environment Canada to give us an overview of the weather conditions, what happened, and what's in the forecast for future. Trudy Kidd, she's based in Kitchener. She was very amazing. She provided a presentation. I've highlighted 4 slides that I could discuss here. I do apologize, they're all small, but I try to explain them in a manner that's understanding for everybody. Top left corner, you see precipitation or snowfall during the months of November, December, January, and February. The brown map, the brown color that you see indicates that we were below normal conditions. So in November, we were dealing with dry conditions. In December, we were roughly meeting normal conditions. January was somewhere between normal and dry, whereas February, you see the green color all over the place, and that was showing that we're seeing above normal precipitation levels or snow levels. On the top right corner, you see 2 bars. The blue bar shows the amount of snow that was measured in a station belonging to Weather and Environment Canada in Kitchener-Waterloo area. And the red bar shows what the long-term average is. So you can see from the months of December, January, February, and March, we had roughly more than double, or sometimes 50% to double more precipitation recorded in that station compared to normal conditions. Conditions were wet. We had a lot of snow in the system. And for members of the public, it is always possible to go on Environment Canada's website and look at what the outlook of the temperature and precipitation is combined for the next 3 months. Trudy had access to more stuff that is not available to public. So she broadcasted to us for months of April and May, March, April, and May. I provided with April and May for you. And the maps that you see at the bottom, the left one shows how much precipitation anomaly we're expecting to see, and the one on the right shows the temperature. So basically on the left, as you can see, we're mostly covered with the areas that are white. It means that the amount of precipitation that we're expecting for the month of April and May is going to be somewhere near normal. We're not seeing anomalies, we're not seeing higher or lower than normal precipitations. Whereas for temperatures on the both maps that are shown on the right section for April and May, you can see it's covered by brown and yellow. And that's usually indicative that we're expecting warmer than normal temperatures for those 2 months. So this is an overview of what was provided. This slide was what the message was for the meeting that we had in early March. GRCA, under a provincial program, measures the snow twice a month and reports it. All CAs do that. So we have manual snow surveys every 2 weeks. The last one that was done prior to that event was done on March 3rd. And on March 3rd, 2025, we were seeing snow in the watershed that was approaching to the really high levels that we had back in 2014. On the top right corner in the table, we are showing how much snow we had upstream of our large reservoirs and how much water equivalent we had in those in that snowpack. So a snow depth is something, but how much water we have in the snow depth in that snowpack is another thing. That's more determining factor for us. And as you can see at the end, almost all the reservoirs had somewhere between 50 to 200% larger water equivalent than their storage capacity. So we had more water in the snowpack than what the reservoirs could store. And this is March 3rd. These levels of snow depth and water equivalent were not seen in the past 10 years. The last time that we had those levels were somewhere in 2001 and 2014. So you can see how a potential we might have felt for potential flooding. I provided how much runoff storage capacity we had at each of our large dams, Shan, Conestoga, Guelph, and Woolwich. And basically speaking, comparing these red dots are the ones that were seen in 2014. We had 2 or 3 times larger than the capacity of the dams in the snowpack. The Shan Dam, I'd like to attract your attention to. We had in early March, we had around 140 millimeters of water equivalent. Back in 2014, we had more than that, 193. Just to put these numbers in perspective for you, that means that we had somewhere between 2 to 3 times of a month of rainfall in the snowpack. So when you have 2 months of rain in the snowpack and the temperatures jump from -5, -10 overnight to 15 to 20 tomorrow morning, it's as if you had 2 months of rain happening in one day. And that did happen over this weekend, the weekend of March 14th. I will provide a more detailed presentation for that later on next week. But that was why we saw that response, basically. Another thing that we were worried heading into this event was the potential for ice jams. The rivers were all covered by ice, and we had a lot of cold in the system and a lot of ice-covered rivers. We do have a river watch system that we send staff. We have divided the watershed into different segments, and each segment has its own designated staff that goes and looks at the river conditions and reports to the head office live. And based on that, we can prepare this map that tells us which parts of the water courses or water systems are covered by ice, which ones are ice-free, and which ones are partially covered by ice. Red shows full ice, blue shows open water, and yellow shows partial ice. And as you can see, a lot of our systems were fully covered by ice. So that could explain why there was some anxiety and concern about the potential of ice jams. We did that in February 24 and presented it to our flood coordinators to let them know what the conditions are. We even repeated it on March 3rd, the day before the meeting that we had the flood coordinators on March 4th. On most of the systems or some parts of the systems that we had identified potential for ice jams, Neff River system, lower portion of the Grand around Brantford area, a bit through the city of Guelph, and a bit through lower portion of the Neff. Thankfully, conditions, they were not prepared and suitable for an ice jam to occur, but we wanted to show what the conditions were during that event. This chart is something that I can use to explain how we can evaluate the risk of ice jams. We all remember 2018 and the consequential ice jams over there. I'm using Shan Dam daily air temperatures as a representative of what the watershed was observing. The blue dots show the maximum daily temperature. The red dots or orange dots show the minimum daily temperature. Looking at this trend, you can see that from December until mid-January, we had 5 weeks of really, really cold temperatures that were hitting even below 20 degrees. That resulted in a lot of ice formation in the rivers at that time, 2018. Then in mid-January, we had a sudden shift in temperatures. Things went up, it started to melt, and things started to move. Once all the ice and all the runoff was moving, temperatures dropped again for a couple of weeks. So all the runoff and ice chunks that were moving in the system were frozen in place, and it started creating that ice dam per se. And when temperatures started to exceed in February, we saw the consequential flood as ice jams. The purpose of this chart was to show that this year, we did not have those conditions, thankfully. So the temperatures that we saw, minimum and maximum with a solid orange line, solid blue line over there, shows that we did not have that kind of temperature patterns that resulted in ice jam generation and ice dam formation in 2018, fortunately. Another way to look at it is look at the Grand River levels at Brantford, the stream flow gauge that we have. We are aware of 2 known ice jams in that community in 2018 and 1996. So the river level in that station is shown with the red line in 2018 and blue line in 1996. You can see how similar those two are. We had a bit of a ice jam at the beginning of the season. Then because of the increase in the temperatures, it was a smaller in magnitude, things started to flow, and then the river levels dropped a little bit as a result of the cold temperature that we had. The ice dams were formed, and once you had a sudden increase in temperatures, the larger ice jams happened in end of the February. You can see a very similar pattern. The green line shows the river conditions in 2025. So we were fortunately over a meter lower with respect to river level at that time. And that was also another indication that we will not either see an ice jam, or if we see it, it will not be as severe as it was done in 2018. So this was something provided to all the local CEMCs on March 4th, so we can provide them with a status condition. Going back to the current conditions, this table, I think you've seen it in the month of February, that was showing us heading into the event, we had more than 2 to 3 times larger precipitation event observed by mid-February. Here on Shandam monthly precipitation, you can see that towards the end of the year in 2024, all the bars were below the normal average, the long-term average. So we were dealing with dry conditions. December, January, and February changed that. We had a bit more, as you can see, as you've seen the previous temperatures. So we shifted from dry conditions to above normal conditions, which is normal. It's natural variation. You're never matching the average. Sometimes you're below that, sometimes you're above that. What's interesting is this. Look at this. This chart at the bottom shows the temperature anomaly, how much we are above or below the long-term average at Shandam. Entire 2024, all bars are above normal. So 2024, we were really warm. Whereas at the beginning of the year, it was as if a switch was flipped. So January and February, we were significantly colder than normal, obviously. That changed by mid-February. By mid-February, after the snowstorms that we had, temperatures started to warm up, such that the anomaly that we had for temperature in February got pretty close to average. So the first couple of weeks of February was really cold. The last couple of weeks of February was really warm. So they balance each other out. And March was like 3 degrees warmer than normal. That's what we've seen, 20 degrees temperatures at the beginning of season, I believe. Precipitation levels as of mid-March has still been a bit higher than long-term normal, but not as high as you saw in February. And as you can see, the precipitation levels in month of March are just matching the average values that we've seen over long-term. Heading into the event before March 14, I just wanted to show them the reservoir conditions that we had. The 4 large rivers that we have: Shandam, top left corner, Guelph Dam, bottom left corner, Conestoga Dam, top right corner, and Woolwich Dam, bottom right corner. The blue line shows where the reservoir level is, and the green line shows the upper rural where we want it to be. Obviously, we were in a very good condition heading into the event. We have sufficient storage to attenuate any runoff that comes in and reduce the potential impact of flooding. After the event, as of today, this is the condition that we have. Obviously, we used all the runoff that was generated as a result of the melt and filled our reservoirs. We are confident that we can meet our April 1st target. We operated a bit above the upper roll curve during the event, and we brought it down, and now we're in a very good spot. We have some rain coming in this weekend. We're confident that basically, based on the available storage, we can reduce the impact of flooding. And finally, as I said, these maps are available for public on Environment Canada's webpage. They just provide an overview over the next 3 months of how much precipitation and temperature condition, how much we're going to get. And on the left, you can see that the orange is showing for above normal temperatures. I think that's the story almost every month. And on the right, you see we are borderline between the green and white. Green areas indicate above normal precipitation. White includes normal. So we're expecting to see a relatively normal spring with respect to temperatures, precipitation on average over the next 3 months. It doesn't mean that they will not fluctuate, but overall, when you look at it, we should see normal conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Sue?
That's amazing. Really, and very detailed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue, for your comments. Rob, your question.
Yeah, through the chair, just want to know, down in Dunville where I basically live, we end up with all the water down the watershed. So I was quite impressed of how nice the ice went out this spring. yeah, there was flooding, but 3 or 4 days is quite normal, and not a lot of damage. And it was great to hear the presentation here about how you can predict about ice jams and stuff. So it's nice to know moving forward, and do really appreciate the updates that we get on flood potential. So kudos to staff.
Thanks, Rob. Any other questions? Yes, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question to staff and maybe a couple of comments after. Do you measure, when you do the snowpack, do you measure the frost in the ground?
And through you, Mr. Chair. No, we measure just the status of the snow, and that's the standard provided to us by the province.
So I guess my comment will be is that, and I'm an old farmer and lived by the river all my life. This year, everybody commented on how fast the snow disappeared. The snow disappeared because there was very little frost in the ground. There was a little bit in the Brantford area, but we had no, when you get those rains in end of February and March, there was no lakes in the fields or anything like that because there was no frost. Everything disappeared real easy. You don't get that every year. And that's, and what Rob is saying too, it is nice that you have to have a flood once in a while to clean the crap out along the riverbanks. If you live along the river, you know what that's like. But this year, it was a nice flood.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you like. I worry about when sometimes the other kind of floods that come along that it's not controlled by the man upstairs.
Thanks, Brian. Any other questions? Sandy?
Thank you. Thanks for the report. I get a lot of questions from people along the river about the capacity in the reservoirs. So when I look at the maps that are in the report, can you remind me the upper dotted line is sort of the upper limit of where we want to be. How much capacity is still in the reservoir?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm more than happy to later on provide more detail on those lines and their meanings. I think if you look at the reservoir operations policy in the presentations, they're explained better. Depending on what time of the year that the capacity in the reservoir changes, when we were heading into the event, we had roughly around 50 millimeters of capacity in the reservoir. That may not make much sense to you, but 50 millimeters of runoff storage is equivalent to half a month of rainfall, roughly. We had more water in the snowpack than that capacity storage capacity. One thing that I like to mention is that I really like to express appreciation, admiration for the work that was done in early 80s to establish those rule curves and the targets to meet both competing objectives of flood control as well as water supply downstream. That line shows it really provides a very good balance between available storage to control any coming runoff and also having enough water in the reservoir for supplying the river downstream further in summertime.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I'm imagining some of my residents and what they're thinking when they look at this and see that we're slightly above that upper line, and then they hear about rain coming and that they get pretty nervous about that.
Sure, if I may respond through you, Chair. Two things. During a flooding event, we use that active storage to go up and come down. That said, given the concerns that we had with climate change over the past several years, back in September, if I recall correctly, we provided an update to our reservoir operation policy. We changed that line from a solid line to a dashed line that allows us to go a bit above that during an event, so we can store the runoff that's melted as a result of a sudden melt that we might see in January sometimes or February that otherwise would have been lost completely. So it's always been our practice to go a bit above that line during an event, but we bring it down. And as you can see in the charts, we brought it down immediately after that. And right now we're below the upper roll curve. So we have the amount of storage that's assumed for this time of the year at the moment heading into the event.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Sandy. David, you have a question.
Well, actually, Sandy asked it because I wanted to ask about the roll curves. But the second part of my question would have been, if I look at the Cheyenne Dam Reservoir, it was up, obviously quite high. It was above the upper dotted line. how long would it take to get it back below the dotted line, or is that weather dependent?
Through you, Chair. That's a very good question, and I think I can speak more to that next month when I provide the report of the flooding. But how fast I can provide it depends on how much water we have in the system downstream and how close we are to flooding thresholds in downstream communities, because we try not to flood them, obviously, when we discharge the dam, unless there are concerns with dam safety. And in that situation, we provide warnings and we increase the discharge.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll look forward to it next month, because I'm also thinking about, maybe at some point you want to get it below that upper, but you got ice, jamming up down below, and you don't want to make that worse too. But okay, we'll talk about it next month.
Another thing that I'd like to bring to everybody's attention is that, again, we're looking at it after the event. Heading into event, on top of all this normal, we had somewhere around 30 to 40 millimeters of rain in the forecast for Sunday morning that fortunately did not happen, right? So we have to be mindful of that as well.
Right. Okay, I need a mover and a second to receive the report. Moved by Brian, seconded by Pam. Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, all in favor? It's approved. Thank you. Nothing with respect to committee of the whole, nothing with respect to general business. Item 14, the third reading of bylaws has already been done under 11D. Other business, David, you had something you wanted to raise?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And obviously, we've gotten a few emails regarding land disposition. And well, first off, I'll say it's encouraging to see so many people, invested with what GRCA is doing, and GRCA matters. My question, I guess, is, well, let me preface it with saying that we all know how we got here. The province makes the rules. We just follow them. We have a policy as far as land disposition goes. But everything, I'm grateful that all the emails said the same thing, so I didn't have to read every single one. But what that email said was that I couldn't argue with anything they said, right? It all made sense. The only thing I was surprised about is that they said that other conservation authorities haven't done what GRCA has done. In other words, they haven't moved to sell any excess lands. Now, I understand not all conservation authorities are the same. We have our own unique situations, but I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, whether you or the CEO can kind of give us some context about, in regards to all these emails, all these concerns, and do we just plow forward, or do we revisit this?
Let me respond, David. So we're going to come back to the board next month. The letters will be in correspondence. There'll be a background report by Sam to put everything in perspective. I think you understand that these decisions were made almost a year ago by GRCA, and Sam is going to provide an update so that you have some context for those template letters that were sent to you and most other board members. So in your April agenda, look for the response.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and thank you for raising it. And by the way, I'll say this to you, David, as well as everybody else. Whenever you've got this kind of matter that you want to raise, you don't have to wait for a board meeting. Send me an email or send Sam an email, and we'll gladly let you know where we are. This was a point of discussion with Sam, myself, and Sean yesterday. And like I say, we will have a response for the board for the April meeting. Thank you for raising the matter.
Thank you.
We're now going to go into closed, okay? So I'll just give everybody a few minutes to vacate and turn things off and turn things on. The rest of the meeting. Okay, so we're back up and running, so let's finish the meeting. So we've got resolutions from closed that we need to approve. I need a mover and a seconder for the confidential report GM 0325 CO8 for receipt as information. Moved by Sue, seconded by Brian. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. 16B, scientific, technical, commercial, financial information belonging to the municipality or local board. That confidential report number GM 0325 CO3 be received as information. Moved by Doug. Seconded by Pam. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Litigation or potential litigation report. Moved by Pam, seconded by Bruce. Questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. The drainage agreement. It's a long one. I'm not going to read it. We could be here all afternoon. Moved by Sue, seconded by Gord. Questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. The next matter, the motion is a little bit different than what you received, and so what goes up on the screen is the correct motion. I need a mover and a seconder for this motion with respect to the rafting. Moved by Pam, seconded by Doug. Questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. And the last matter, confidential report number GM 0325 CO7 be received as information. Moved by Brian, seconded by Rob. Thank you, Rob. Questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. So the next meeting is April 25th. I hope not to be using a cane by that point in time. We'll see. Appreciate everybody's attendance this morning. Safe travel this weekend. Maybe Vahid knows if we're going to have ice or not. I should have asked him. I didn't. Let's hope we don't. Need adjournment. Moved by Ken, seconded by Sue. We're adjourned.